Hello, happy to see you on Cloud IDE Days 2022. Today we're going to talk about Eclipse Che and how to run your favorite IDE on Kubernetes. My name is Ilya, I'm software engineer at Red Hat. Also, I'm Eclipse Che committer and I'm in charge of the Eclipse Che hosted by Red Hat for OpenShift Developer Sandbox service. And this is actually the easiest way to try Eclipse Che online. In a single click, you can get Workspace up and running and try Eclipse Che. And today with me is David, the co-speaker for this session.
Hello everyone, my name is David Kwon, and I'm also a software engineer at Red Hat and also an Eclipse Che committer working alongside Ilya. So I'm also in the same team that deals with the Eclipse Che hosted by Red Hat for OpenShift, and I'm very excited to be joining everyone here today.
Thanks, David. So let's talk a little bit about Eclipse Che. So Eclipse Che is the open source project under Eclipse Public License 2.0, and it provides a way to run Kubernetes native IDEs for developer teams. And how it actually works. So I must say that Eclipse Che is a Devfile-centric project, so it uses Devfiles to create workspaces. So the question is, what is the Devfile? So if you think about it, the concept is very similar to Jenkins file, where you have a Jenkins file in your repository, and in a declarative way there, you describe your pipelines. And Jenkins eventually understands this file and creates the CI accordingly. So pretty much the same concept for Devfiles. So initially, Devfile was something that was used only by Eclipse Che internally. Now Devfile is a separate project. It's actually a sandbox project on CNCF. There is a separate website for Devfile. So it's called Devfile.io. You can find all the details there. But the idea is Devfile is the representation of your developer environment as a code. So it provides a kube-native API for cloud development workspaces, and it provides the easy-to-configure, highly reproducible definition of portable developer environments. So it's declarative abstraction, which includes the runtimes and comments for starting, running, debugging, and testing your project. So how it actually works. So on the next slide, you can see that we have the Devfile YAML inside the Eclipse Che blog project. So this is the GitHub project that we use for publishing our latest, greatest articles about Eclipse Che. And in Devfile YAML, you can see that we have various components described and commands. So here we have the components that boils down to containers with the Quay image and memory limits that is used for running our blog post and the commands to start it. And now I want to quickly show you how it actually works. So you probably see my GitHub now, and here I have the Quarkus API example. And this is the project that we use for demoing Eclipse Che today. So I have the Devfile YAML inside the project, and also in the README, I have the developer workspace badge. So actually, it's just a URL to start in the workspace based on this Devfile. So let me click on it. In the beginning, we said that David and I are working on the Eclipse Che hosted by Red Hat. So in the first demo, we are going to use this service for starting the workspace. So when I click on the developer workspace badge, what actually happens? I'm redirected to my Eclipse Che hosted by Red Hat. And in the progress bar, you can see what happens under the hood. So Devfile is found in the repository. And we are now applying this Devfile to create the workspace. So in the logs, we can see that various operations happening. So it's creating and pulling the images, creating the runtime containers, and we can actually switch to the OpenShift cluster and see what actually happens on the Kubernetes level. So in my dev namespace where the workspaces are created, you can see that the workspace pod is now up and running. It consists of a couple of containers which have everything I need for development. So if I switch back to the dashboard, you can see that my workspace is almost loaded. And now I can start development. So here you can see that I have my source code, and I can actually run the commands. So I can click terminal, run task, and here I have all the commands defined for development my application. So I can execute the package command, and it will perform the nvn clean package against this repository. So pretty straightforward, right? This is it for the first demo, and let's actually talk about new and noteworthy, something new from 2022. Actually, the Devfile concept is not something new. So what was before? Devfile was just the Che-specific component that we used by the dashboard, which pass it to Che server, which creates the workspaces. So Che server is basically a Java application that is running on Tomcat, and which is used Kubernetes client library for creating the workspace pods, services, routes, secrets, and config maps using the Java. And now we actually have pretty different architecture. So first of all, as I said, now Devfile is the project and tool agnostic specification of developer workspaces, and it's part of the CNCF, and it's not tightened to Eclipse Che actually. So other tools can leverage this, and we have contributions from different companies like AWS and JetBrains that contribute to this specification. So we still use the dashboard, and the dashboard actually parses these dev files and pass it to another component, which is DevWorkspace operator. So DevWorkspace operator is actually the Kubernetes operator. So if you are familiar with OLM, application lifecycle management, you can figure out that basically this operator is in charge of transforming and maintaining the workspaces based on the custom resource that is created. So how it works, basically from the dev file, we create the custom resource that is, Kubernetes API custom resource, which is called DevWorkspace. And DevWorkspace custom resource is managed by this DevWorkspace operator, which actually creates the workspace objects based on this custom resource. And in the next demo, I'm going to show you which capabilities and which possibilities it allows us to have. So here you can see that I have my terminal, and I have my cluster running. So I have the OpenShift cluster, and I have the Cloud IDE days namespace here. So currently it's empty. What I can do now, I have a list of samples, and this is basically the YAML files of the DevWorkspace specification. So I can just show you one of them. So let's use TNX custom resource. And actually, this is a declarative definition of the workspace that I'm going to create. And so it also contains the components, the endpoints, memory limits, and commands for running my workspace. The cool thing is that I can actually create a workspace using the kubectl apply command. So I don't have any other components involved. So I just use the CLI to apply this custom resource. And what is going to happen under the hood? Okay, so there is, I probably have a typo here. So let me type Che next. So now you see the DevWorkspace Che has been created. And if we go to the cluster, we can see that now the workspace pods are about to be created. So they're in the pod initializing state, and now they're running. If I execute the kubectl get DevWorkspace command, you can see that now I have the DevWorkspace information, and it actually has the URL for accessing my workspace. So I can click on it, and in a couple of seconds, we should have the workspace up and running. So you see, the workspace was created simply by applying the kubectl YAML file, and we now have it up and running. So from the admin perspective and from the automation perspective, we can spin up workspaces using the bash scripts. So pretty cool notion. And we can also manipulate with this workspace using the custom resource. So if I open the DevWorkspace custom resource, here you can see I have the Che custom resource here. This is a representation of the workspace, and I can actually change the spec. So I can change the started field to false, save it. And what we are going to see is that our DevWorkspace operator kicks in and actually terminates the workspace pods. So it stops the workspace. So we now don't have the workspace running. If we go back to the workspace view, we can see that our workspace is now offline and we cannot develop anymore. So yeah, that's pretty much everything for the second demo. And now I'm passing over it to David, who is going to tell you about the way how we can choose another editor. So you already see Eclipse Che-Theia in action, but we have something more for you.
Yes. So we definitely did see how the editor for the DevWorkspace, Eclipse Che-Theia looked like. So in the next few slides, I'll go over how VS Code looks like and IntelliJ looks like in a DevWorkspace. So if we go to the next slide, one way you can specify what editor you would like for your DevWorkspace is to edit the URL that you use to start the DevWorkspace itself. So in Ilya's first demo, we saw he was able to start a workspace by accessing a URL from the badge from the README. So this is the same kind of URL. If we look into the right-hand side, we see the Che editor parameter. So here we could add a reference to a different editor we want. So here we could put reference to the VS Code editor or IntelliJ editor. So we could put that there. But before that, let's go over how this whole URL looks like. So on the left-hand side, we have the Che host name. So this can be the domain name that users use to access Eclipse Che. Next is the GitHub project or GitLab Bitbucket project that you want to clone in your DevWorkspace, so the project you want to work on. And lastly, the parameters that I've mentioned, these are completely optional. So you can also provide a Devfile path we see in the slide if you want to provide an alternate path to our Devfile within our project hierarchy. And other parameters, they're all defined in the documentation, Che documentation, and we'll see links to that at the last slide for today. So next, I will do a demo for this portion. So I've prepared a URL that follows that exact format, except let's try to start a DevWorkspace with the VS Code editor. So I prepared the URL here, and I will go into Google Chrome, and let's see how that looks like when I access it. So a bit more information about the project I'm cloning. So this is the project that Ilya showed at the beginning. It's just a simple Quarkus REST API where I have 5 endpoints. So this first endpoint here, we just list all of the food resources that are stored in our Postgres database. Looking into the Devfile version 2, here we have all of our development containers we use for our project. We have the Postgres container here with the necessary environment variables that we need for the setup, and as well as the commands that we saw in Ilya's demo. And over here in the OpenShift console, we see that our DevWorkspace pod is up and running. Going back into our first tab here, looks like there's issue. Okay, great. So VS Code has started. If we just wait a bit, we should see. Okay, great. So we should see in the Explorer view on the left, we have our project cloned. And this is, I'll just go and call the about command and see that we have VS Code up and running. So this is the open source version of VS Code with some changes done for better integration with Eclipse Che. Over here, we can start a terminal in any one of our development containers. So for example, I could create one in the Postgres container. And currently, I also have the Java extension installed, the VS Code Java extension. You can see that it's doing some work in the background here. Let's actually start the Quarkus application and see how that looks like in a DevWorkspace. Over here in the dev file, I have my command to start the Quarkus project. So currently, the integration with the Devfile command section and the VS Code UI that we have, we're not able to run this command with the UI at the moment, just some integration that will be done in the future. But for now, I'll just copy the command and run it inside of the tools container I have here. So we can see here, I'm not downloading any Maven artifacts. And this is because I actually started this DevWorkspace before this demo and installed the artifacts beforehand. So what happened there was I was able to install these artifacts in a persistent volume. So in subsequent times I call the Maven command, I don't have to reinstall those Maven artifacts. So while we wait until the application starts up, at the beginning, I mentioned the get all food endpoints. So I also define an endpoint in the dev file as well. Should be great, this endpoint here. And we can see that endpoint in the UI here as well. And I can copy the endpoint to the clipboard. And I believe our Quarkus application is now up and running. So at the bottom right, we do see a notification. And if I open in a new tab, this will access the route for us to call the endpoint in our application. So this is the get all foods endpoint that we just accessed, and we have all of our food resources coming from our Postgres database. So our project is up and running. We can get resources from the database, and which is great. Next, I could also demo just running a command in a different development container if I want to. So here, I'm in the PostgreSQL container, and I will just log in. I've logged in, and here I'll just do a simple query. Right, so now we have all of our resources from our database. So essentially, to recap, what we just did is we were able to get a URL, specify the VS Code editor within that URL, and use that URL to start our DevWorkspace. So if we wanted to have a colleague join us and they don't want to, they just want to get up and running really quick, we can just give them this URL and they'll be up and running, starting the application without any prior setup. So providing the editor in the URL, that's one way today that you could specify an editor for your workspace. I'd like to introduce a second way, and this time let's open the IntelliJ editor and see how that looks like. So to stop this workspace, I'll just go back into the dashboard here and just press stop workspace. So this is equivalent to going into the DevWorkspace custom resource and setting the started attribute to false, which is what we saw in Ilya's second demo. So the second way we could specify an editor is, if I go into a different branch here, is we can provide a file in our project. So this is the Che editor file, and provide the reference in this file instead. So we provide the same reference as we would in the URL method. So here, this is just the plugin ID from the Eclipse Che registry. And here I'm specifying the Eclipse Che editor. So to start a dev workspace with this project, I will just copy the URL here and go into the dashboard and create a workspace right here. We should wait until, so this would start up the dev workspace and we should see the IntelliJ editor. But in the interest of time, I have a separate video for this section. So I will be playing this video and doing a voiceover. So here, after some time has passed and everything started, and after we get this screen, we see that we have IntelliJ up and running. So first, I'll go into the file project structure. Going to go into the run menu, and we can see the commands from the Devfile. So we have the start dev commands. At this point, I'll just run all of the tests and see how that looks like in IntelliJ, in a workspace running in the DevWorkspace engine. So after some time has passed, we should see that all of our tests have passed. I think next, I'll also demonstrate the debugger, just going over some common developer actions. So here in the source code, I'll add a breakpoint, and going back into the test, I will just debug one of the methods. I should also mention this is the community edition for IntelliJ. There's also support for the Ultimate edition, and you would also have to provide the license key for that, of course. And yes, we do hit the breakpoint. Lastly, I'll just quickly demo the Java features such as the validation, code completion, go to definition, features like that. So this concludes the IntelliJ portion of the demo. And for the last slide, I'll bring it back to Ilya.
Great demo. So basically, in order to get involved, the easiest way is just to go to the Eclipse or Che website, where you can find the Getting Started guides, documentation, links to our blog posts, links to our Mattermost channel, where we would be happy to answer your questions, as well as there is a template for starting the workspaces on Eclipse Che hosted by Red Hat for Java, Go, Python, .NET, PHP, Angular, and a lot more. So in a single click, you can get the workspace provisioned if you have the account. And I believe that's about it. Thank you very much. And we have a couple of minutes for questions.
Thank you.
All right. So the first question is, what are the main differences between Devfile version 1 and Devfile version 2? So as I said, so Devfile version 1 was the Eclipse Che specific thing. So Devfile version 2 is basically the specification of a Kubernetes API, and it's tool agnostic. So not only Eclipse Che, but any other tool can use it and and this is basically the main difference. So what is removed? So for example, in Devfile version 1, we have the Che plugin and Che editor components types. Now it's not the case anymore because it was Che specific thing. We don't have, we introduced a volume component type. And I think there are some small details also, but all in all, the Devfile version 2 is the Kubernetes native API specification that can be leveraged by multiple tools, not only Che. You can find more details on the Devfile IO docs, so it provides the full description as well as the migration instructions from Devfile version 1 to Devfile version 2. The next question is, if I have an old Eclipse Che instance running on a cluster, can I upgrade it to the latest version powered by the DevWorkspace operator? And if so, how? Great question. So the migration currently is a manual process. So this is because of multiple things that were introduced in the recent versions, and they're operator specific at some point. So, for example, the previous version that is powered by Che server was run in a single namespace mode. The DevWorkspace operator version is running in the all namespace mode, which allows to manage the custom resources from pretty much all the workspaces on the cluster. That's why the migration process is a manual standard operation procedure that is described in the Eclipse Che docs. So you can find all the details in Eclipse Che docs with the scripts and step-by-step guide how you can upgrade. So the answer is yes. The update is not automatic. So if you have an old instance, the cluster admin need to perform this SOP to upgrade to the latest version. The next question is, what's the extension plugin support like for Che-Theia VS Code IntelliJ? Can you easily install extensions from the corresponding marketplace? So I will pass it over to David. So David, would you mind answering that one?
Yes. Yeah, thank you. So for this one, the extension support for all three editors is a little bit different for each one. So for Che-Theia, by default, we have the plugin registry. So we're able to install, for example, VS Code extensions that are defined inside of the plugin registry of Eclipse Che. For VS Code and IntelliJ, for VS Code specifically, the extensions, yes, you can download extensions, and from the extensions tab of the editor, you can search for extensions there, and they're coming from the OpenVSX registry. So once we install extensions, it'll be stored inside of the persistent volume, so that the next time you start that workspace, you will still have those same VS Code extensions already there. There has been some more discussions about just how VS Code extensions would run in general inside of the containers. But I think generally we might have the extensions running kind of in the same container as VS Code. And I think that's kind of the approach we are kind of aiming to take in the future. And I think that's what we have now, actually, a little bit similar to that. And for IntelliJ, this part, you can definitely also install plugins for IntelliJ as well. And it's kind of the same idea where we install these plugins inside of the persistent volumes, and we have the same plugins when we restart the DevWorkspace. And yeah, in theory, there shouldn't be any issues with plugin support for these editors. And yeah, that's my answer.
Thanks, David. The next question is, are there any other editors or IDEs supported by Eclipse Che? So I can take this one. So the answer is yes. So for example, you can also use the Jupyter notebook as an editor. So it's available in the Eclipse Che. Also, we had a prototype of running Eclipse desktop RCP applications in Eclipse Che. So it used JDK for Broadway. So Broadway backend provided this support for displaying JDK application in web browser, but it was actually the POC mostly. So for onboarding the new IDE, so onboarding the new IDE is very specific. So different IDEs use different technologies. So yeah, currently we do have the support of the Che-Theia Che code based on the open version of the VS Code, Jupyter, and IntelliJ. And the very last question, is there also a difference of performance time to bring up a new workspace between Devfile version 1 and Devfile version 2? So yeah, actually the workspaces started based on Devfile version 2 are faster because we had less internal overhead. For example, for Devfile version 1 processing, we use plugin brokers that mounted the volume, and it was pretty time-consuming operation. This is not the case for DevWorkspace based on version 2, so it's much faster. The bottleneck during the workspace startup currently is still the volume mount part that hugely depends on the persistent volume, mounting timing by the pod. I think that's it about the questions. Thank you very much. Again, if you would like to discuss anything else, go to our Mattermost channel. We would be happy to chat. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.